Coming off Scottie Scheffler's PGA Championship win at Quail Hollow, it is only fitting that we've got Jason Soucy on the Honest Sunday podcast. I'm Bryan Fenley, golf broadcaster and broadcaster for other sports for different networks. Jason is championship director of the 2025 PGA Championship, and we're going to have him on to tell his story, learn about his life, the ins and outs of it in a thrilling way. And Jason, I'm thrilled to finally have you on. Thanks so much for being here.
Yeah, well, thanks so much for having me. It's been, like I was saying, it's been a whirlwind here for the last few weeks. It's always a challenge to sort of gather yourself when you're looking at a date on a calendar for, in my case, well over 2 years, and then that date comes and goes, and it's like, oh, wait, the our job's still not over. So that's been a little bit of the challenge that we've been dealing with here as our team is staying motivated because we've still got to clean this place up.
I got to imagine, though, even with people celebrating Scottie Scheffler's win, Scottie Scheffler celebrating that win, that the way that thing ended with all the theater and the drama, that you yourself and your team had a lot of celebrating to do based upon how that finish happened.
Yeah, no, I mean, we all talk about it. That's one of the unique things when you are in the golf industry. We don't, you don't have a couple teams coming in with a name in their jersey, maybe that's representing the entire city or wherever it might be. We've got 156 of the best players in the world that will come in and compete in a major championship. It's exciting for us right now in the majors where some of the best players in the world don't play on tour on a regular basis. So for us, there's at least four times a year that, the best players in the world get to compete against each other. And so, my competitions committee, my group there that's worried about everything that happens inside the ropes, like that's their goal. They're going to try to set up this golf course and get in a way to show, who the best players in the world are, what's a stern major championship test. And then my team, we spend, countless hours getting ready to make sure we can get thousands of people in and out of this property to get up there on the ropes to be able to watch the best players in golf and to do that safely and easily. And um, when you can get the number one player in the world, Scottie Scheffler, making the turn on Sunday with John Rahm and Bryson DeChambeau, breathing down his neck, that's kind of everything you're hoping for from a golf industry standpoint is to have the best players in the world rise to the top and show their game. And Quail Hollow Club is known for its Green Mile stretch of holes. Those three holes always play as three of the hardest holes, in the tournament. And it was the same way again this year. And certain guys made it through that stretch of holes. Certain guys didn't even get to that stretch of holes and had other challenges and things like that. But best player in the world sort of distanced himself right there and sort of be able to watch Scottie on the green hoist that trophy up. Again, kind of everything you hope for from a championship director standpoint, from a on-site championship team, the club, organization, everybody like that really kind of reinforces what you set out to do before the week even started.
Underlying what you're saying there, as you just referenced, there's so much that you can control in terms of the lead up, but there's also, and I'm sure that over the years that this has become easier, but the acceptance, the understanding that there is still a lot, as you were hinting, that you cannot control. How have you come better to terms with that which you cannot control over the years, and having that really be a strong asset, a component to this equation as well?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a little spoiled, I think, in my career. I mean, my first major championship golf event after moving over from working in the arena business was the Ryder Cup in '99. So if you want to talk about a storybook ending and a finish and drama and excitement, I was kind of like, where do you go from here? And then unfortunately, throughout the rest of my career, a lot of times, you don't have four walls and a ceiling. So anytime weather, comes into play and sort of changes what maybe the competition team had set out to do, changes what we set out to do when we're, building hospitality programs and building viewing areas and everything. Like, I think that's one of the things that you kind of have to come to terms with pretty quickly in this industry of like just being aware of like, hey, it doesn't matter, like the best laid plans, weather can kind of come and change that, and I do sometimes miss the arena where, maybe the biggest challenge you might have is if something's going on with the ice underneath the basketball floor or something like that, you get a little slippery floor, but where the AC is not working great. But otherwise, like you got four walls in the ceiling, what's happening on the court or, on the rink is gonna, you know, you know, come and make, it's not going to make a difference to the competition necessarily. Whereas for us, just about every week something's happening. It doesn't matter if somebody gets the wrong side of the draw because the weather changes dramatically. So you'll see certain players that you expect to play your golf course really well that maybe sometimes don't get the same sort of looks that some of the other guys do. And I think that's what makes major championship golf great is you got 72 holes to see who's going to be standing there at the end. And I think Quill Hollow Club for the second time now has proven itself to be a great major championship test in the sense that, it really did, you know, stand up to the best players in the world trying to have their game at the peak time. And Scottie just proved that the heater he's been on for the last last several years, it doesn't look like it's slowing down anytime soon.
How many times have you walked that course, Quill Hollow Club, in the lead up to the event?
Is Scottie himself?
You yourself.
Oh, me? Yeah. I mean, I like to say I walked it a lot. I drove it a lot with the golf cart. Like that's I will say that the amazing thing that we have here with Quail Hollow Club is the infrastructure that they have after hosting an annual tour event and what they've done, what they did to get ready for the 2017 PGA, changes they made with the President's Cup. They have an amazing sort of internal infrastructure that makes an event operator really excited, where we don't normally have like 20-foot wide paved roadways. There's cart path network, but there's also internal road networks that we have. And so, we developed and built this golf course to, hold 40,000 people a day, safely and easily. And it was because of that infrastructure they created. So I made countless trips on the golf cart along with my operations lead, Eric Nuxel, as we started, getting prepping for this build, um, summer of 2023. We've been looking at the overall plan from, back in 2022, but, starting to get really ready for it in 2023 and looking at our overall inventory and structure and what we're going to sell for hospitality, what we're going to save for viewing, amphitheaters for general fans, all of that. So to just go through that process, and when we started construction on February 3rd, so it is not a small process to get prepared for what is 1 week and really 4 days of competition. So like that's the part that I think a lot of the folks, even my family that's been watching me do this for 25 years, still has a challenge grasping of like, oh, all the lead up that comes into something that's kind of over in the blink of an eye.
What is your family even learning to this day about what you do and what you did do week of the event in May?
Yeah, no, that, and I think week of it is one of those things where it's funny where sometimes people will text me on like Tuesday. I'm like, I don't want to bother you when it's busy this weekend. I'm like, no, no, I'm actually much busier right now. Like, cause like as the way the progression works, if you're an operator, the practice rounds are great for us as well. We want to kind of ramp up to having, the peak crowds, peak feel of what's going to happen, everything we're trying to do from the Spectator Championship team at the PGA of America is to make a really smooth event experience happen. So early in the week, we've got a lot of special events that are going on. You'll have like the Champions Dinner. You'll have a lot of like nuances that are there. Like once the competition starts at a major, we kind of can turn off a lot of the other noise and be like, hey, catering setup, or we've got the best caterer in the world out here to help us, deliver the food and beverage program. you know, Now it's all about the competition. It's all about what's going on inside the ropes. Everything kind of leading up to it, there's a lot of other ancillary stuff that might be happening that's outside the ropes that's also like taking people's attention. Whereas, if you've got ESPN and CBS, going full bore to prepare themselves to deliver this product to 500 million people worldwide, then that's when we sort of let that piece sort of take action. So hopefully by Saturday or Sunday, we're in that troubleshooting mode and checking in with everyone, making sure everybody's, the event met their expectations at that point. So that's I think a little bit of like the awareness that again, I think that people just aren't even, it's like, wow, Saturday and Sunday must be crazy. Like, like hopefully if you've done everything right, Sunday you're supposed to have a little bit more in time to just sort of take in and enjoy connecting with the people who you've spent the last several years getting ready to host the event.
Speaking of an event, I heard that if they ever had a Happy Gilmore 3, that you would be a part of this. What am I getting at here?
But I've just we've joked over the time is you know I got my start in this career. I was working for the Celtics and the Bruins in premium seating. I had worked at the Olympics. I had kind of done a lot of things on my resume to prepare myself to work for major sporting events. The golf industry was of interest, but it wasn't necessarily, something that just sort of popped off the resume that I should be doing. Um, and while I was at the Celtics and the Bruins, I worked for a team there that was phenomenal. Mary Clivio had run the premium seating department for the Old Garden for like 25 years and knew everyone in the whole city. She wasn't going anywhere anytime soon, so there wasn't going to be a lot of upward mobility for me in that role. And so I got an opportunity to interview with the Ryder Cup. And I met with Dan Baker, who was the tournament director there. And Dan took a chance on me for a rather, elevated position of being operations coordinator, overseeing the operational build of the championship, of the Ryder Cup. And um, so I got to work for Dan then. And then Dan, after the Ryder Cup, he was from Connecticut and moved back to Connecticut to run, at the time, the Greater Hartford Open. And I stayed with PGA of America, ran the senior PGA Championship for years. Things changed in our careers. Dan ended up leaving the Hartford Open. Travelers took over the title sponsorship of that. They were looking for someone who had built sort of sponsorship programs from scratch. I had done that opening an arena. I had done that with the PGA of America. So I got a chance to come back to work in Connecticut and follow Dan's leadership again. As he had left Connecticut, I came in to work at what is now the Travelers Championship, and then um, Dan worked for the PGA of America for years. I came back and joined later here in a different role in a different department. He was working with our academic partners, but he had recently retired and took over the role as the golf coordinator, golf consultant for Happy Gilmore too. Um, Adam Sandler went to my high school in Manchester and Central, and so uh, I was joking with Dan, like, "Hey, after Ryder Cup, Connecticut's PGA Tour event, if you're Happy Gilmore 2, this has to mean I have to be a shoe in for Happy Gilmore 3 just to keep following in your footsteps." And so, unfortunately, a real sort of tragic part of this story is Dan died in a car accident. So it was like, whoa, that was a real, just someone who had kind of helped shape my career and done so much and had just got to what I thought was sort of the pinnacle of his career to kind of work if people knew him over the years, and a lot of stuff came up in the last year talking about he was able to get to the premiere and things like that. So, but that was the perfect job for him, was to kind of oversee making sure that Adam Sandler's humor and all of that with a cult classic like Happy Gilmore can get piped back out to the world there. So just sort of some ironies once you kind of get out and go around this golf industry, how many different ways you can kind of touch people over the time. But for me, it's been 25 plus years of meeting a lot of different people and a lot of amazing folks.
How do you feel like you're keeping Dan's legacy alive?
I mean, I think we all are here at for me, right, 99 Ryder Cup right here behind me was like I said, my first indoctrination into what spectator championship golf is. And I think anyone that works for the PGA of America spectator championship team, because we're our own entity, we only really oversee, we have a member championship team that oversees hundreds of tournaments, around the country for PGA members, but for spectator championships, it's the Ryder Cup, it's PGA Championship, it's the KPMG Women's PGA Championship, and it's the Senior PGA Championship. Those are the four spectator championships our department runs. So luckily they're major championships and they're usually partnered with CBS or NBC. And so we get a chance to kind of help, you know, our goal is to try to grow the game of golf by showing off the best players in the world and whatever, tour they're playing on, getting a chance to play in a major championship. You've got the Wanamaker Trophy that's been around since 1916. You've got the Alfred S. Bourne Trophy from the Senior PGA that I got my first tournament director job doing, been around since the 20s. So like the legacy of these events, and I think that's what's amazing about golf is that it spans generations, which is one of the reasons why I love the sport is you can compete against your grandfather and granddaughter at the same time with the handicap system and such. And so to me, our entire goal, everybody that works for the Spectator Championship Department is to, stage great championships that get seen worldwide that hopefully help grow the game of golf. And Dad gave me my first shot in the industry, in 1998 to get ready for 1999. And I think everybody that works at the PGA of America just has that same mindset of just bringing a little joy into the game. It's, we do a lot of great for the game of golf when it's all said and done with how the investment trickles down and then more importantly just what the fans can experience. But we're not we're not the ones that are curing cancer. Maybe some of the benefits from our event will help to do that, but in reality we need to remind ourselves that it's still a game and it's an amazing sport and it's supposed to be entertainment. And I think that that's a little bit what like the Happy Gilmore thing is. It reminds people this is supposed to be entertainment. And so hopefully everybody here in Greater Charlotte was entertained for, several hours when we had the best players in the world here a couple weeks ago. But, that's kind of what our goal is when we set out to start an event is to have a product that hopefully was entertaining and worthwhile and makes everybody want to come and go to the next tour event.
Why do I feel like part of your goal in coming down to the Carolinas to take on the role of championship director of the 2025 PGA Championship was to get closer to your daughters and
Yeah, no,
being
that's
a girl dad and that sort of dynamic that doesn't get spoken here.
yeah, I mean, for me, I'm really lucky. My wife, you know, has, she has a master's degree. She's the licensed therapist. She's got a career that's been incredibly successful. But at times she's allowed, due to the nature of how our industry works, like we stayed in Connecticut for as long as we did with the Travelers Championship because that event allowed us to have our daughters be in the same primary school, and so that was really important to both of us. But, we were talking about, hey, what do we do? Like, I've been told since the girls were toddlers that we were probably going to end up with wherever they ended up was like that's where our roots were going to be. So our oldest daughter said she's wanted to go to med school since she was like in eighth grade, and so she was like working at Hartford Hospital in eighth grade, doing like little projects and stuff, and applied to a bunch of different sort of pre-med programs. Ended up getting into the honors college at South Carolina and sort of um, despite having maybe some other schools that she had initially looked at that she really wanted to go to, the package at South Carolina allowed us to say, hey, if you go to South Carolina, we could probably help with med school a lot longer than maybe some of these other programs that you're looking at. And so um, she kind of came down sort of like kind of almost sight unseen, really, with checking out South Carolina. And I think she was probably there for 2 months before she you know, FaceTimed us from the pool while she was doing her pre-calc and was like, "Hey, I'm not coming back to New England. This is good stuff." So we knew that we had the sort of the writing was on the wall, and so there was serendipity where I was coming down to go to an SEC football game for another guy from the Northeast that you know. learning new things, and I definitely missed out. I don't know. I probably I can see the real reason why a lot of folks choose going to like an ACC or an SEC program down here in the Southeast. That those football games are so much fun, and I was coming down to a family weekend game in 2022, and that's when um, they were getting ready for to host the PGA Championship, but the President's Cup was here. And I'm like, oh, well, I've been, like I said, worked on a tour events, worked, around the tour for 2 decades, and I had never really seen Quail Hollow in action. I knew the Wells Fargo Championship, back in even the Wachovia Championship days was a really well-regarded tour event. I knew the whole teams that had worked on those events and, worked with their sales team on best practices during sort of tour meetings. I'm like, I got to see this in person. And uh, but I hadn't really reached out. And so I called my tour liaison. I'm like, we're all out of staff tickets. And I was like, oh man. And so I put a call into David Charles, our senior director of championships here at the PGA of America, to see if he was going to be in town because my wife and daughters are going to go shopping in Charlotte. And I'm like, I'll go check out President's Cup while they do that. And um, he said, "What are you coming out for?" I'm like, "Well, my daughter's, in college, just coming to see you." He's like, "Wow, your kids are this old, that old." He's like, "Hey, does that mean you're gonna come work for me again?" I'm like, "Well, I didn't really know that was an option." And he was like, "Well, we're looking for a championship director to help, with PGA Championship." I'm like, "Well, ironically, we're just starting to talk about, are we looking to be sort of snowbirds? Are we looking to move south? Are we looking to sort of follow?" And so it sort of worked out in that sense that I think I was a little worried about staying home in New England with an empty house and looking at the hallways with both girls saying they wanted to kind of spread their wings and leave. They weren't going to go to the same sort of Northeastern colleges that we talked about going to. I think, again, SEC football, studying by the pool, that seemed more appealing than, walking through the snow the way I did, up at University of New Hampshire. So, luckily for me, there just happened to be an opportunity that was kind of always on my bucket list. When I was with the PGA of America the first time, I was lucky enough, like I said, to work on the Ryder Cup. I worked on several PGA championships, but just in a sort of support role. And I was a championship director to be able to run the senior PGA championship multiple times, but never got a chance to run the actual PGA championship. So when I was able to see Quail Hollow for the first time, I got out here for the President's Cup. I got here at 9 a.m., took a walk, started walking the front nine and checking out the infrastructure and walked through their TV compound. And I got to 10T and I texted David. I'm like, hey, if this offer is still open, I'm your guy. This place is a kind of an event operator dream, I will say I probably misread it slightly just because I hadn't really, even though I've been to the PGA Championship the last few years, I hadn't realized how much our infrastructure has grown in the last 20 years compared to an annual tour event. I knew it was much larger, but I happened to get up to Oak Hill later, and I've been looking at our master plan and looking at things how they had changed from 17. And I'm like, wait a minute, like our TV compound's like 8 acres up here at Oak Hill. Like we had it like 4 acres in 2017. Where am I going to find these other 4 acres? And that's, David kind of laughed. He's like, yeah, that's good luck. Have fun. This is what this is all about. So it's one of those things where I think that, the layman's probably like with technology, with everything that's getting, like I would assume that broadcast components could, at least maybe not shrink, but at least sort of stay the same and like look at the efficiencies. And I think the tour has done that with NBC and Golf Channel very well because that's, that they can kind of work as one more cohesive unit. Whereas Major Championship World, you know, ESPN is our lead-in broadcast partner, which is amazing from a broadcast standpoint because it opens up a whole different, area. Golf Channel might be a little bit more niche than, the ESPN lead-in. And if you've got Scott Van Pelt out there talking about things on Thursday, Friday, that's going to have a whole sort of maybe wider audience from the sports world. And so I think that's great for us. Plus, we have a great partnership with Sky Sports and being broadcast internationally. But those three components kind of operate a little independently. So need a lot more space for that than even the annual tour event here at Wells Fargo, it's a CBS event, but they don't have the same level of infrastructure that's needed to broadcast a major championship to the amount of hours and with live streaming the way it is. So I will say we were kind of bursting at the seams a little bit here at Quill Hollow Club for, most major championship venues you see these days are 36 holes, facilities because you have maybe some more room within the property to spread out. But Quail Hollow Club is probably one of like a handful of 18-hole facilities that can host a major championships now at this point in a lot of ways for the infrastructure that is needed. So that was fun, but that wasn't really what I saw when I got here the first time. I saw the beautiful paved roads. I saw, an incredible golf course that, from an amphitheater standpoint, holds people so well. The natural, the beauty of the Green Mile stretch and the lake with the finishing holes. Uh, Even with the best broadcast partners in the world, what Quail Hollow Club delivers in person from a beauty and aesthetics just doesn't come through on TV until you can stand out there. So it was very quick for me to be able to say, hey, if I get a chance to be close to my daughter and likely close to my younger daughter once she decided to go to school somewhere down in the southeast as well, it was a no-brainer to say, sign me up, let me come do this. And I will say that my younger daughter's, she went to couple football games in a row and decided to follow her sister to South Carolina. And so I have two Gamecocks now, and which is interesting because the two of them have really never done much the same. So I would not have thought that they were going to be joining the same, joining the same sorority, going to the same school, and doing all that. So that's been a great parallel for me to my wife and I to be able to, get together down here. It was a delayed start because my youngest was still in high school. We had thought initially she might finish school down here, but she decided she wanted to stay in her high school. And so we lived apart for over a year when I got down here to get this started. But to have them get down here, do season tickets at Williams-Brice Stadium and see the Gamecocks play with a great SEC schedule and have this championship go on sort of parallel at the same time was a really kind of rewarding experience this last year.
What's the secret to being separated like that for a year in how much it might have been, I don't want to say easier, but possible when your wife, who my wife does as well, she works as a counselor in mental health. So, but to have somebody like that going through this experience where the families are living in different places for a short amount of time, to have somebody like her, how does that create a level of empathy towards the situation?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was definitely challenging for us in the sense that it was weird because this was sort of coming out of COVID, and that was one of the things that had changed. And one of the reasons why I think my daughter relished going to South Carolina was like, oh, being outdoors, being, taking advantage of if you're going to be at a beautiful campus, maybe enjoy several months of it as opposed to I feel like when I was going to school in the Northeast, you maybe had 2 months when you wanted to be outside of your campus. So getting down here, I think that was going to be helpful. I think my wife's perspective coming out of COVID, her school was really challenging. She was overseeing a magnet school as a school social worker for, a very challenging population that has, a lot of concerns, a lot of different socioeconomic issues. And I think pandemic really made it hard on a lot of kids. And these are elementary school kids. And so for me, I was like, oh, maybe it's time for us to do something different. I can get, we loved our life in Connecticut. It was a great place to raise the kids, but it was like maybe the world's telling us something to kind of go like, Alexis is in school down here, come out. But I would say that year, um, what she was able to do to help those kids was huge. So I think that's one thing that maybe keeps me going. I think when you're sitting here and like I'm running a golf event and there's like, oh, what's going to go on in, 18 months from now? Like it's like I've got one date that we're all striving to here. She's going out and doing things on a daily basis. And so like that made it easier to be apart, I think, in a sense of um I could kind of just dive into work. There the real thing I think that is what these jobs do, that what myself and my team does, when you have a finite time, it's like it just ramps up and gets busier and busier. There's only so many days in a year, and there's only so much you can get done. And at some point, you have to be like, "Oh, is this something we can execute? Maybe we have to stop doing this and go there." I will say, with being apart, you know, I think hopefully that helped this championship from the better, because I was able to basically be stuck here for the bulk of the time and dive in, Monday through Thursday, pretty much never turn my computer off and just try to check in with what was going on up north. We jokingly said, I'll parent the one that's down here, you can parent the one that's up there. I think someone in college that maybe reaches out for Venmo every once in a while when they need parking money or food money versus a senior in high school and what goes on senior year. I think I probably got the better end of the stick there. So, uh, but I do think it was helpful for me to be able to see, like, okay, hear the stories, hear what she was accomplishing on a daily basis. It was like, oh, I better stick to my end of the bargain here and make sure this event delivers. So didn't spend a lot of time in Charlotte, out enjoying what's an amazing city to live in, that first, several months, because I was basically, like I said, basically working Monday through Thursday. And then what I try to do is on like every 3 weeks, fly home on like Thursday night, work from home on Friday, do stuff around the house, see my younger daughter Riley and my wife, and then either fly back Sunday night or Monday morning and be back in the office at 9 a.m. So it was a little bit of a whirlwind. There was not a lot of a personal life. My handicap has suffered dramatically. I haven't posted a score in 2025 and posted a lot less in 2024. And it's like I can't come back and work for the PGA of America and play less golf, but that's kind of the nature of how this happened. So I think when you put that much into it and you make that kind of sacrifice to kind of be apart as a family, that it makes it that much sweeter when the event does come off the way you'd hope it to. But I would say, like, that's not the way I would forecast or suggest people to do it. It just so happened in our scenario was the alternative. I felt like was I was staying in Connecticut, working on an event in Connecticut. Both girls are gone, and we're walking around our house that we loved and looking at my daughters both had the entire upstairs to themselves. So it was like, you look at it upstairs and you're like, oh, like it's empty. They're not there. I really didn't want to have the empty nest syndrome. So I feel like it maybe was a little more taxing than I would have wanted to do the transition. But I think hopefully we're in a spot now where, we're getting to see both daughters thrive in school and enjoy sort of like there's this chapter of their life where we kind of get to be somewhat flexible and move to our next one, ourselves.
Well, thankfully, the PGA of America doesn't judge your talent solely on what you can do as a player on the golf course. So
That's true.
thankfully, there's that. And then therein lies the real reason behind you, which is, in conclusion, this conversation, we really got, and I was hoping to accomplish what I did, the driver, the why and the how of what you do, what you do. And so much of that is family based, and particularly the very sweet things that you said about your wife. And that is really what I wanted to figure out, and how much that was a part of things and how that drives you to do what you do. And no wonder you've been able to do all these things, and how lucky that the family was able to consolidate in the South, and you get to enjoy some of the SEC football, and hopefully now get a chance to work on your golf game a little bit.
Well,
Because
that's
what are you
ultimately that's
working
what we said. I mean, the nice part is the way our championship team works. There's only a few championship directors, and we kind of rotate from event to event. And so, um, cleanup, I learned firsthand with the Ryder Cup in '99. That was kind of my job because Dan left to go run the tour event in Connecticut. It was like, good luck, man. Enjoy cleaning up, And so I basically stayed and oversaw the sort of deconstruction of the Ryder Cup, which at the time was the largest golf sporting event that had ever been held in history. And so, that tear down was a indoctrination for a young guy like me to be like, oh, this is what you have to be prepared for. So luckily, the way we have it now is usually we're in like a 24 to 30 month cycle when it comes to the championship. So You don't really necessarily it's need to have someone on the ground. You need someone working on the event, but you don't really need to be kind of there on a regular basis to kind of help with the volunteer recruitment and start building rapport with the vendors and getting ready for construction until sort of that 24-month span. So I'm excited to work in the Ryder Cup again because I'm going to help support the team that's going to deliver the Ryder Cup up at Bethpage here in a few short months. So I'll probably head up there, for 10 to 15 days in a couple months to kind of be on that team and then do a few things leading up to it as well that I can do remotely here from Charlotte. But to be here to oversee sort of this cleanup and get Quail Hollow Club to back the way that they expect it to be. They have to host the Truist Championship coming up here next May, so there's no rest. Normally, you're at a venue that maybe isn't planning to host an event for another decade, so they're a little bit less stressed about, hey, we can kind of ease into it. This one, we are systematically trying to figure out how to tear down while we can also get prepared to get it ready to host people here in the short term next year and make sure that we can kind of get the greens and grounds back, get rid of the scarring and make sure it looks the way it always looks here at Quail Hollow Club, which is incredibly pristine. So to your point, my hope is to, you know, take advantage of the Charlotte that I didn't really get a chance to see until my wife got down here, last year. So like we hopefully can have a little bit more free time, be more of a 40-hour work week kind of mode and take advantage of the golden hour that lasts a little longer down here with a little bit more warmth than maybe it does up in New England and try to fit in some golf, get a couple lessons from a couple of my PGA of America members so that I feel like I'm not. I will say there's usually a stigma where there's an expectation that I'm going to be the A player in the group. Oftentimes, we go play, and I have to remind them that that's not the side of the industry that I'm on. Unfortunately, right now, I'm the outside the ropes guy. So I can drive the cart and maybe suggest the cocktails that we enjoy what we have there, but I'll let the inside the ropes guys take advantage of what happens on the inside of the golf course.
You do have a grade A game when it comes to planning, organization, and championship directing. So don't think you don't have that A grade game. It's some in some place, shape, or form in regards to what you do. Jason Soucy, I'm Bryan Fenley. What a thrill to have you on. A pleasure for all that you did in putting together the host event, the PGA Championship at Quail Hollow Club, to be able to host you. A real pleasure. Thanks so much for being a part of this.
Thanks, Brian. Appreciate it.